Here on the channel, I have tried and tested every single Sigma APS-C prime lens for the Sony E-mount, except for one, and it's this one I'm currently filming on, the Sigma 16mm F1.4. This is one of the most sold APS-C lenses of all time, and it's also really highly rated, but it is now nearly 8 years old, so is it still worth it? Well, that is what I am going to be answering in today's video. I'm going to be sharing with you my hands-on experience using this lens and break down its strengths, weaknesses, and real-world performance. And just before we get started, on screen right now are two different shots. Now, one of these shots is being filmed on a setup that costs around $3,500. The other is half of that. And my question to you is, can you tell which is which? All will be revealed later in the video when we get to talking about this lens's optics, but first, let's talk about the lens's build quality. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna do that back in the studio. It's a little bit nippy out here.
The build quality is exactly what we have come to expect from Sigma. It feels great in the hand, it has a nice metallic feel to it, and it also feels durable and robust. The lens itself is dominated by its only control point, a rubberized focus ring that is lovely and smooth for manual focus pulls. The lens itself is weather sealed against dust and splashes, and at the rear of the lens you will find a rubber gasket to give an extra layer of protection against the elements. Switching over to the front of the lens, you'll find a super common 67mm filter thread mount. In terms of size and weight, this is actually Sigma's heaviest and largest APS-C prime lens. It comes in at 405 grams, and when you stack it up against Sigma's smallest prime, you really start to notice the size difference. But the size and weight of this lens can be attributed to two key factors: the wide-angled 16mm focal length and that standout f1.4 aperture. So this lens may be a tad heavier than other Sigma APS-C prime lenses, but as you're about to see, when it comes to optical quality, this lens delivers the goods. From my hands-on testing, I have been thoroughly impressed by the image quality from this lens. But just before I get too far ahead of myself, let's talk about autofocus first, which from my testing is simply superb. Paired with my A6700, the AF is fast, precise and silent. Eye tracking locked on quickly and remained locked during my testing, and I can confidently say it would perform just as well with any A6000 series of camera. And in my in and out of frame test, the lens seamlessly transitioned focus from my hand to the background repeatedly without fail, so zero complaints when it comes to autofocus. The image quality from this lens is exceptional. No surprise really, I expected nothing less from Sigma because I am yet to be disappointed by any of their lenses when it comes to pure sharpness, and this lens is razor sharp, like a beautifully handcrafted Japanese katana. The f1.4 aperture again is also a standout feature, and whilst you won't get much compression due to the nature of this focal length, if you are the right distance to your subject you can get some pleasing subject separation. Plus the fast aperture makes this lens an ideal choice in low light shooting conditions. This lens is also pretty versatile, and off the top of my head I can see this lens being a great option for landscape, cityscape, architecture, astro, and definitely some applications of street photography too. You can also use this lens for some basic macro and product photography, as this lens boasts a minimum focus distance of just 25 centimeters, meaning you can get quite close to a subject and achieve some pretty sick detail shots. The only downside that I can see with this lens that has contributed to optical performance is some color fringing. Lateral chromatic aberration is well controlled, longitude chromatic aberration is where the lens shows some weakness. In high contrast areas you may notice this color fringing, however on the positive side of things this can be easily rectified in Lightroom by adjusting the lens corrections manually, so that's pretty decent. Due to the nature of this wide angled focal length, this is a popular and go-to choice for video shooters. Now one thing we haven't actually touched on yet is the 1.5 times crop that comes with using APS-C cameras, meaning that this lens provides a 24mm full frame equivalent field of view. And just so it happens, 24mm is my favourite and go-to lens for talking head videos, and I'm actually using one right now. And what I love about this focal length is how wide it is, but also when you combo that with a fast aperture, as you can see, the background just melts away. It's so creamy and gives me fantastic subject separation. Now I've had a few people asking me, is this lens a good option for vlogging? And my answer is yes and no. The major downside that I see with this lens is unfortunately the lack of any form of lens stabilization. Whilst this isn't much of an issue for photographers unless you are using a really slow shutter speed, but in most scenarios, if you're keeping a steady hand and using the right settings to the right scenario, you'll be grand. However, if you combine this lens with something like the A6400 that lacks any form of IBIS, when it comes to shooting video handheld, well, it's going to be pretty darn shaky. You're going to notice a lot of unwanted movement and jitters in your footage, and if you're also trying to vlog with this lens, that shakiness is going to be exacerbated. You will definitely need a gimbal if you want to achieve smooth movement into your shots. But if you are planning on using this lens with something that does have 5-axis in-body stabilization like the Sony A6700, your footage is going to be much smoother. So yes, you could vlog with this lens if you had that sort of setup, but a setup with zero stabilization isn't something I can recommend. The focal length is also something to consider when you're looking at a vlogging lens. Now, this being on APS-C cameras, it is going to be a 24mm lens, and 24mm is alright for vlogging, but I do find that when I vlog with this kind of focal length, I have to hold my arm all the way out just so I can fit my fat head within the frame. For vlogging, I prefer a wider focal length, and my go-to lens for vlogging is actually the Sigma 10-18 f2.8. It's more compact, much wider, and offers the versatility of a zoom range, which is what you want in run and gun situations. If I had to be honest, I'd say that this lens is better suited for this kind of shooting, locked off on a tripod talking to camera. But it's not all bad. Going back to this compression from the beginning of the video, were you able to tell which was the expensive setup and which was the cheaper one? Well, I can confirm that B was indeed shot with the A6700 and the Sigma 16mm F1.4, while A was captured using the Sony A7C Mark II with the Sony 24mm G Master F1.4. And as you can see, there isn't much of a difference between these two shots considering the hefty price difference, proving just how well the Sigma 16mm holds up against high-end full-frame gear. Now, since the release of this lens, other lenses at similar focal length have entered the fray, such as the Sony 15mm F1.4. To be transparent, I personally haven't tested out this lens myself, mainly because Sony doesn't lend me any of their gear. Not yet, at least, anyway. However, based on what I have seen and heard, the biggest difference between the Sony and the Sigma is the Sony is 1mm wider, which honestly is a minute difference. The Sony is also more compact and lightweight and does have lens features. But like the Sigma, the Sony doesn't offer lens stabilization, and when it comes to optical performance, again from what I've seen and heard, both of these lenses are pretty on par with each other. But the big advantage the Sigma does have over the Sony is price. As of recording today, the Sony costs £749 and the Sigma costs £389. So you've got to ask yourself, is the Sony worth that extra money? Personally, I'd say no. If you are on the market for a APS-C wide-angle prime lens, then I can highly recommend the Sigma 16mm F1.4. Optically, this lens is outstanding. The autofocus is accurate and rapid, and that f1.4 aperture is stunning for low light shooting and creating amazing subject separation. If you are planning on pairing this lens with something like the Sony A6700, which does feature IBIS, and want to do a bit of vlogging with this lens, then I would say it would be an okay choice. But I would encourage you checking out the Sigma 10-18 f2.8. Whilst you won't get that super fast f1.4 aperture, you will get something that is wider and more versatile. However, if you are looking at this lens for talking head videos like this, then honestly, look no further. And for photography, when it comes to landscape, cityscape, street and astrophotography especially, this is a solid lens. And that is my review of the Sigma 16mm f1.4. And now that I have finished this review, it officially means that I have shot and reviewed every single APS-C prime and zoom that Sigma offers. For now at least. And this gives me a video idea video, which I'd really like to hear your thoughts on, so let me know in the comments below. I am thinking of getting all of Sigma's APS-C prime and zoom lenses together in one video and doing a thorough and detailed breakdown of each lens and share with you which lens I would recommend for different types of shooters, street photographers, car photographers, landscape photographers, etc, etc, so I can give informed information to help people make the right decision on what lens they should buy. I think that could be a pretty helpful and cool video, so if you want to see that, let me know and I will try and make it happen. And no one else on YouTube steal that video idea, it's my idea. Alright, with that said and done, that is where I am going to be leaving today's video. Now before you go, if you want to watch my review video on the Sigma 10-18 f2.8, then check out this video right here, or if you want to see my 1-year review of the Sony A6700, then check out this bottom video right here. But with all that said and done, until next time, create, explore and inspire.